It's wonderful to have people from our community willing to come and be vulnerable and share a bit of their journey. And so we have a handful of people that are going to speak and share with us today some powerful stories of their journeys and loved ones who have lost their lives and their own journeys in recovery. And we have somebody, Jason Shepard from Riverside Fire Authority, who's going to be sharing with us a bit of what it's like to be on the EMS side of things in light of the opioid epidemic and the number of people who lose their lives and call 911 and get EMS involved in their struggles. So again, I'm Cole Meckley. I'm the pastor at Gather Church and the executive director of Gather Community Services. I want to give a quick shout out to some of our sponsors, but I also want to just express my thanks for all of the different agencies that have made their way here today, from Destination Hope and Recovery to Salvation Army to multiculturally minded to Lewis County Health Department. I mean, there are so many folks. There's folks from NA and AA here. But we've also had some folks that have been really contributing along the way, both in giving their wisdom and insights to what this day could look like, and also to providing resources. So I wanted to give a particular shout out to Community Integrated, and they were handing out all the shirts. So yeah, let's give them a round of applause, please. And Choice, I don't know if folks from Choice are still here or not, but they're a great partner in this community, in this region. So WellPoint as well, Great Rivers, BHASO, and Gather Church. So to the staff and folks that have worked so hard to set this up, put it on, organize things. So I'm just so thankful. It's an amazing community that we are in. It's a really diverse community that we are in, Lewis County is. So some of the things that our goals that we have as far as this event, as we have printed on the back of the shirts, is to end stigma, end silence, and end overdose. Absolutely, please, cheer. I want to talk for just a second about stigma. I mean, we talk about stigma, but I don't know that anybody defines stigma. And maybe you'll have your own definitions, and maybe you've experienced stigma. But it starts with judgmentalism. People who judge others quickly, and they heap shame on people, not understanding who they are or what they struggle with or what goes on in their day-to-day life, but they just slander folks. They speak poorly of folks. They shame people. And I don't know, not as a show of hands, but many of you have experienced stigma and shame, and it hurts. And I think one of the most horrible things that happens in the midst of experiencing stigma is it leaves us in a place of exclusion, of isolation, of being stuck and by ourselves and alone and hopeless and desperate and frustrated that there aren't people that really are trying, it feels like, even to understand where we're coming from or understand what goes on in our lives. And I see people shaking their heads, and I know folks that have experienced a tremendous amount of stigma and shame, and it doesn't do us any good. It renders us powerless. We want to be understood. We want to belong. We need to belong. We need to work to undo stigma. We need to grow in understanding. We need to try and understand one another. We need to be willing to make ourselves vulnerable and learn to have compassion and risk fostering deep relationships and connections with people. And we are at a time now that is as hard as ever to foster those deep relationships, because it's hard. I just last week sat down and thought through the last, honestly, year or so and came up with 12 people that I've been close with that have lost their lives, most of whom to overdose. And it's hard. It's hard to want to continue risking, right? It's hard to want to continue investing in people's lives when you're not sure if they're going to be here tomorrow. But we don't have any choice. We have to continue to risk, to relate with people, to get to know them, and to encourage them, to help them make the next healthy choice for their lives. Amen. End silence. One of the things that happens in the midst of stigma And not having a place to belong is you don't find a voice. You don't know how to speak up. You don't know who to speak up to. And there are people and situations in this world where it seems like, and I'm not saying this is actually the case, but it feels like people don't want folks that are struggling to have a voice. But you deserve a voice. We deserve a voice. We have to learn how to speak up. To quote John Lewis, get into some trouble.
I got it.
Good trouble. Necessary trouble. Amen, right? Yes, good trouble, necessary trouble. Like, don't shut up. Make your voice heard. Make your voice known. Speak up and speak out. If we collectively can work to speak up and speak out more, that many more people are going to show up and speak out. And we have this goal of ending overdose. It seems like an extremely lofty goal, but if we could at least curb it and slow it. I've never seen anything like where we currently are in society. I was talking to somebody earlier today, and they were like, what is going on in our world? Like, it is a hard time to be alive. It's a hard time to be a young person. The things that any of us have to deal with on a daily basis and the loss of life is devastating, and it's overwhelming, and it's hard. It's beyond difficult. So I'll be honest with you, the only way that we can really end overdose is if nobody uses a substance that will kill them. And I would honestly love if that day were true, if that day came. If fentanyl wasn't on our streets, if heroin wasn't on our streets, if none of these drugs were available to people and nobody overdosed and died on them. But the reality is, that's not the world that we live in right now. I wish it was the world we live in right now, right? Like, I don't know anybody that thinks, oh yeah, this is a great world that we live in, where fentanyl is killing people every day and people can easily find it. I don't know anybody, except for maybe somebody that's profiting off of it. I don't know anybody that believes that and buys into that. But again, that's not the reality of where we are. Hurt people struggle. They deal with shame. They deal with ridicule. They deal with trauma. And people want to mask it. They want to cover it up. They don't know what else to do. And we need, as a community, to learn to work together so that we can meet people where they are and sit in the trenches with them, get to know them, relate to them, love them non-judgmentally, show unconditional positive regard, unconditional love to people, because that's what changes lives. That's what changes lives, unconditional love. Helping people, again, make that next healthy choice for their lives because they've met somebody that they know, that they trust, that can help them, that can encourage them. Our world is broken, and people experience pain. We need to offer love and support and encouragement and life. Together we can. I don't know about you all, but I'm really sick and tired of being divided in this community and any community. There is a time for good trouble, don't get me wrong. There is, and we have to do that. But at the same time, we share so much in common in this community. I, again, don't know anybody that's just happy to see somebody struggling in their substance use disorder. I don't know a single person. We share so much in common. We might have different ideas about how this world works and encouraging people into recovery, but we share the same goals, and we need to work together. We need to recognize that we are all trying to make a difference in people's lives. Meet together, to come together, to work out whatever differences we have so that we can see forward recovery and hope in our community. All right. Thank you for hearing me out. Not that you had a choice, right? Can't tell you how much I appreciate each and every one of you for being here today. So we have 3 people that are going to speak, but we have somebody introducing each person that's going to speak. And so at this time, I want to invite up Derek and Chad. There they come. Another round of applause for Derek and Chad.
I don't know.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So I'm Derek, and little bit of my story is I've struggled with addiction since a very young age, since about the age of 13, and so I've lost people to overdose throughout my addiction and into my recovery. I work for Gather Church, and that's where I had the privilege of meeting Chad and getting the opportunity to walk beside him during his addiction and into his recovery. Chad, do you want to give a little backstory about how addiction and overdose have affected you?
Well, I've overdosed 4 times in my life, and if I didn't have somebody there that actually truly cared, and turn it up. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. There it is.
Sorry about that. Well, I've overdosed 4 times in my life, and if I didn't have somebody there that, cared for me or even knew what they were doing and could keep a cool head and had the appropriate things to get me out of it, I wouldn't be here today. I myself started doing drugs when I was about 12 years old, and yeah, there you go.
So Chad here is like a walking example of how a harm reduction approach works. I met Chad on the needle exchange, and he would come and see us, and we'd talk, and we started developing a relationship. We started developing a little bit of trust, and it's not about meeting any expectation. It's about just caring for someone, loving the person in front of you, and helping them with whatever they want help with. There's not a criteria to care for someone. Do you want to share a little bit about the overdose experience that inspired you to do something different?
Okay, so back November 26th, I was at a motel with a friend of mine, and he overdosed while we were smoking. Let me put it to this. We were smoking Fetty, and I fell out, and I didn't realize that he had kept going, and he overdosed and died on me, and they charged me with controlled substance homicide, and I went to jail. I was looking at life in prison, and I called this gentleman right here and told him if I get out of this and I'm able to come home, I'm ready to do something different with my life. And then about 4 days after that, my attorney called me in and told me that if I signed this piece of paper, I could go home today. Well, that day. And so I signed the piece of paper and I came home, and I now have 9 months and 2 days clean and sober. But if it wasn't for Derek and Troy, I wouldn't have even known about this path that I could take to become sober. That needle exchange actually saved my life, and I believe it could save a lot of people's lives.
That's another point that I kind of want to make. So before that incident, Chad had reached out and wanted to try to get clean, and we'd taken him to detox, and when he got out of detox, he had no housing, right? And so at that point, I felt like I had failed Chad, because I had nowhere for him safe to live away from that lifestyle, right? But he kept going, and eventually he got arrested, and through the grace of God, we were able to coordinate some clean and sober living for him when he got out. And I think that makes all the difference in the world. I think people need safe places to live in order to change their lives. And so I really want to thank you, Chad. You're a blessing. The work that I get to do today can be very hard. It comes with a lot of heartache, okay? But I can look to you, and if one person can find a piece of what I have, like you have, all that's worth it, you know? So thank you.
So I'm going to invite up Leah, who is going to introduce Tracy and have her come up. So Leah, yeah, round of applause for Leah.
Thank you all for being here today. Your next speaker is Tracy Rader. She is my mother-in-law and the mother of Blake Hansen, who we lost to overdose in December. So I think what she has to say is really important coming from a mother's perspective.
On December 15th, 2023, I joined a club that I never wanted to be a part of, and that was the Bereavement Club. My name is Tracy, and on that day, I lost my youngest son, Blake, to a fentanyl overdose. In the U.S., every 5 minutes, someone loses their life to this drug. In areas that are heavily hit by fentanyl, there's a noticeable rise in suicide, unemployment, and DUI. It has a broad range effect on our communities. It's an epidemic that is impacting thousands of families and wiping out an entire generation of our kids. But there's good news. There are people that care and that are devoting their lives to bringing people like you and me out of the darkness of addiction and into the light of recovery. With the help from these people, recovery is entirely possible. There is even a chance to exceed your own expectations on what your life can become. Ask for help, work the steps. Recovery is possible.
So I get to introduce the next person that's going to share, and his name is Jason Shepard, and he is a lieutenant with Riverside Fire Authority. And just real briefly, Jason and I met, 4 years ago about now? And he walked in to gather, having heard about our MAT clinic, our low barrier medication assisted treatment program, and demonstrated that this guy has a serious heart to work with folks that are struggling with addiction in our community. And I can't tell you how blessed Centralia and Lewis County is to have a lieutenant like Jason here. So it's a privilege and an honor to know you and to work alongside of you and to have you share with us today. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. I started taking some notes and it turned into a full page, so forgive me. Fair warning for those with little kids, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it's like from the perspective of a first responder and what it's like to respond to an overdose. So I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. My name's Jason Shepard. I'm a lieutenant with Riverside Fire Authority. Thank you. Paramedic firefighter. I'm also a physician assistant, and I'm the EMS coordinator for the Riverside Fire Authority. So we serve Centralia and rural Centralia, 184 square miles, and I'm in charge of all of EMS paramedics and EMTs. I also, as Cole stated, I volunteer, gather meds first in the Suboxone clinic. And I got involved with that, hoping to learn how buprenorphine and Suboxone works and learn about MAT treatment and how we could maybe integrate it with emergency medical response in Lewis County. So I'll talk a little bit about EMS. It's a very unique job, right? We have the honor and privilege of being invited into somebody's home when they're likely experiencing the worst day of their life or the worst day of their family member's life. So, and we respond to every kind of medical emergency, from somebody experiencing a heart attack to an elder that maybe fell down and just needs help getting back up. We'll respond to a car accident, and then maybe we'll get a call for somebody who's just cold and wet and hungry and needing to get into a better situation. So when we get dispatched to a 911 call for overdose, we have great dispatchers who try to identify what is the emergency. And when we respond in Centralia area, we typically respond with 2 units. You get 4 people. Sometimes you might see a fire truck, it may be 2 ambulances, but a lot of the times these situations require a lot of urgent medical intervention. You know, a lot of emergency things need to happen really fast, and because of that, you need a lot of hands. So we try to send a lot of people to those situations to stabilize that incident. For us, we're pretty fortunate that Centralia Police Department, they carry Narcan, so they will usually respond in the event of an overdose. But we also have a lot of Narcan in the community. Now, oftentimes, by the time that I get there, the patient will usually have been given at least 1 Narcan. And that's huge. Time is so important in these incidents. When people stop breathing, we have seconds to minutes to get them breathing again and support them in their overdose. Typically with that, there's 2 outcomes that can happen with this. One is a really good outcome. One's an outcome that makes us really excited for those that are called to do this work and respond when someone is experiencing an overdose. If we get somebody back and reverse that, we just saved a life. It is absolutely amazing. But as you can imagine, there's the opposite side of that. You know, what happens when we're too late and when we can't do anything? When the patient is beyond being saved? You know, in those instances, as a paramedic, you know, I'm the one that has to tell the family that we're not going to be saving this person today.
Hey, Jackson, come on. Jackson.
And with that, you know, I've witnessed firsthand, I can't even begin to count. I've been doing this 19 years, so all the families that have experienced that loss, we see that trauma firsthand, and that's the worst day of their life. For us, it's part of our job, but there's a little piece of you that goes with that. You know, it takes a lot of empathy to do this job. You can't be a good first responder. You can't go into somebody's home at 3 in the morning and care for them without having a lot of empathy. And we're not robots. We can't shut that off. But that experience, it's hard on all of us. You know, I think that with that, the cost to our first responders is cumulative. You know, we suffer higher rates of depression, higher rates of suicide, higher rates of substance abuse, and increased rates of death from heart attack and stroke than the average population. But we're called to serve. We're called to help people in these moments and do this work. You know, every overdose death touches so many lives, even beyond the lives of that person's friends and family who's affected. It's a profound waste of human potential. And it touches every level of our community. You know, nobody is spared from this. And I think it's a complicated problem that is exacerbated by calls for easy solutions. I think it's incumbent upon every one of us to collaborate and share our experiences, work together to find strategies that work for a problem of this magnitude. For those that may feel that Narcan is not helpful or even claim that it exacerbates this epidemic, I would like to say to them that I'd ask them to consider the toll that these deaths have on the families of these people that are affected, and the toll that it has on our first responders. Every overdose that we reverse with Narcan, it saves the individual, but I think I would argue, we're saving our first responders as well from that ongoing trauma. So those of us in the fire service, we're doers, we're problem solvers, we're versed in adapting to dynamic and chaotic environments. And I believe we have a part to play that goes beyond the traditional role of EMS in the fire service. And at my department, we've worked to start a Leave Behind Narcan program. So when we respond to an overdose, we have Narcan that we can hand out to the patient's families or their friends and leave that for them and members of the community when we respond to overdose. We also received a grant from Department of Health to get more Narcan on our ambulances and train our EMTs in administration. Believe it or not, even though a layperson could administer Narcan because of some previous rules, only paramedics could administer that. So now our EMTs can also administer Narcan, and we carry Narcan supply on all of our ambulances. And we've been working on a community program where we hope to work more to coordinate entry of the patients that we interact with who experience overdose, to get them connected to these resources that you see here today. So I just want to say I appreciate you giving me the time to speak today and the opportunity to serve this community. Thank you.
So I have a couple questions for you. We heard from Jason concerning what our local EMS is doing to end stigma, to end silence, to end overdose. And I'm just challenging you right now. What can you do? I want to encourage you to stop for a moment right now. Just think about it. It could just be something simple. What can you do to end stigma? Just take a second and think of just one thing that you could do to end stigma. What's one thing you can do to end silence? Where can you go? How can you have a voice? Where are those times, what are those situations when maybe you felt like you should have said something, but you didn't say anything? I want to challenge you. I want to encourage you. How can you work to end silence? And what can you do to end overdose? We have Narcan available. It's one of the most simple things that we can do in this community and in every community is carry Narcan. Have it on yourself. Know how to use it. It's not complicated. You can have it. What is one other thing that you can do to end overdose? Maybe it's as simple as inspiring somebody with hope. How can you inspire somebody with hope? Many say that struggles with addiction are rooted in shame. We need to help people work through their feelings of shame. We need to work as a community together to inspire people to have hope, to dream and to imagine that they can live a life in recovery. I want to take a minute and we're going to do a prayer walk in a little while. It starts around 6 o'clock. But I know not everybody is going to be able to do that. So I want to just take a minute right now and ask you to remain in silence. And I want you, and this is hard, and I know we don't always like doing this, but I want you to just recognize that we have grief. that we have collective grief, we have communal grief, we have individual grief. And I just want you to be able to name that to yourself and to be in touch with it for a minute. And maybe that grief is connected with a specific person. Maybe it's connected even with a particular place or situation or time. But I want you to be in touch for a minute with the grief that we're all sharing.
Oh, my key broke again.
We don't always know what to do with our grief. Sometimes, personally, I'm afraid to face it and I don't know what to do with it. But there are some just simple and practical things that we can do with the grief that we bear. So we have folks over here at this gold table that are connected and able to help folks process grief. There was an organization here, I don't think they're here any longer, that left some flyers behind concerning some opportunities to get involved in grief groups. And there's also another program starting up that's called Grief Circles. And it's simply a time for us to come together as a community and grieve together. Because unfortunately, grief has a tendency to spiral on itself. It leaves people in states of desperation and hopelessness and not knowing where to go and what to do and how to move forward in their lives, and sometimes catches up with us and compels us to make bad decisions. So we do well to work through our grief. There are some bags, they're just white bags, and there's some purple ribbons, and you can decorate those bags. There's some sand that you can put in them so they don't fly away. But I think that there's other aspects of sand that can be cathartic, pouring it into that bag, and then some little electric candles that you can put in on top of those. And there's also some hearts that you can write people's names on and set those around in the gazebo and hang them from the twine that's in the gazebo, just as an opportunity to express and to name the loss and the hurt and the pain that we feel and the grief that we're going through. And then if there's somebody that you would like to talk with a little bit more, there are folks available, and there's more information concerning opportunities we have in our community to grieve. So we're really bad at silence in our culture. We don't know what to do with it oftentimes, but we need to become better at just being in silence. So I just want to take another minute or two and encourage you to just reflect, to think about the grief that you've experienced, so that it doesn't end up just keeping us stuck, but that we can find hope and direction through the grief that we feel. So let's just take another minute. I invite you, if you would like, to pray with me. Almighty God, you know us. You know what we feel. You know the sense of loss. You're a God that can empathize with us. You're a God that joins us in our grief and in our loss and in our confusion. You know our desires. I pray that you would encourage us, that you would meet us in our grief and in our loss and give us hope. Guide us. Guide us as a community that is too oftentimes divided, and bring us together. Check our hearts when we feel sense of judgment and stigma in ourselves, and remind us of the way of love, of unconditional love. That your Spirit rest on us in this place at this time. I pray for those that are grieving deeply right now. And I just ask that you would be with them and sit with them and let them know that you're there and that you understand and that you care. Help us be together. Unite us. Praise you for the hope that we find in you. Amen. Just want to express my deepest thanks for everyone that's here. I see so many faces of people that I've known for a long time. And I'm just so overwhelmed with appreciation that you're taking time out of your schedules. You could be up to all kinds of other things, but you care enough about the struggles that we face to be here. So thank you so much for being here today.